Hello future MDs, our review session for today will be all about psychology, which is part of the social science coverage of NMAT exam. This is part 1 of the lecture, where we will discuss schools of thought of psychology, nervous system, sensation and perception, consciousness, memories, motivation, emotions, principles of growth and development, and then psychoactive drugs. Lalagay ko na lang din yung link for part 2 sa description once I uploaded it already. Before we start, I'd like to introduce and thank our lecturer. Her name is Miss Gabrieli Kekegan. She is a graduate at University of Santo Tomas with a degree of Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I would like to thank her for allowing me to share this Zoom recording here. By the way, she also has a YouTube channel where she shares her vlogs. Feel free to visit if you're interested. Her name there is Gabi Kekagan. I'll also put the link below so you can visit if you want. Without further ado, let's begin the lecture.
So today we're going to be having our NMAT review when it comes to the psychology subject. Okay, so when it comes to psychology, when you're going to be talking about this topic, you cannot have something in your mind that you already have a prejudice. So when we start this NMAT review, let's remove all of our prejudice and try to relearn everything that we already knew. Okay, so these are the topics to be covered for this session, which is schools of thought in psychology, the nervous system, the sensation and perception, consciousness, memories, motivation, and psychoactive drugs. Right. Okay, so schools of thought. So for schools of thought, when it comes to this topic, this is how psychology was built. So it all started actually with the two, which is structuralism and functionalism. If you would look at this, they are the first two to actually emerge. Actually, they're the ones who are actually fighting before. So let's start with structuralism. So first is this is the first school of psychology. This was founded by William Wundt. He is actually the father of psychology, and he focused on the breaking down of mental processes and the method of introspection. What do you mean by introspection? That means looking inwards. So when he was talking about structuralism, he was mostly talking about, okay, so how do people actually think? So that's how structuralism came to be. And then this was also the important contributor. One of them is Edward Teichner. Okay, so next is functionalism. Functionalism was created by William James. It was founded by him. This was actually against structuralism. If structuralism goes inwards, functionalism is saying, why do people actually do this? Is it because we have particular psychological aspects that they actually possess? It's not because what you feel inside, it's because it's biological, basically. And then for Gestalt Psychology, for this one, this word Gestalt, by the way, it means whole. So that's why it's called Gestalt Psychology. It means that everything around us makes who we are. The experience that we have, so it's not just what we feel inside, it's also the attributions of other people, society. That's what Gestalt Psychology is talking about. And this was one of the contributors that is very well known is Max Wertheimer. All right, so I think this school of thought is very popular amongst everyone, which is Psychoanalytic and Psychodynamic, which was founded or was contributed by Sigmund Freud. Okay, it focuses on the unconscious thoughts. So we will delve more into this later on because we actually have a topic which is theories of personality. But let's do a little snip on it. Okay, so this one, it focuses on naman what we feel that we don't really know about. So it's mostly the unconscious. Now, this is created because of the background of Sigmund Freud. So the background of Sigmund Freud is mostly about him having traumas, him having these dreams, and because of that, this was created. So this was all about him trying to understand why does he feel this way. So he was trying to connect it to, okay, so I feel this is what I felt when I was younger, and maybe this was buried underneath my consciousness, and because of this drives me to do some things. This drives my personality. That's how it works. Okay, so next is behaviorism. Now, for behaviorism, it just basically focuses on the observable behavior. This actually contradicts psychoanalytic because for psychoanalytic or psychodynamic, this focuses on your unconscious thoughts. For behaviorism, they try to talk about your personality or your actions and your behavior because of how they see it. They focus more on the observable behavior rather than what you are thinking. So this was the people who are mostly known for is John B. Watson and B.F. Skinner. So I think a lot of people already know about B.F. Skinner due to his experiments. Okay, so next is cognitive. This is somewhat like psychoanalytic, but this is mostly on the processes of how the brain works. So this is the perception, thinking, memory, and judgments. On the proponent of this one is Jean Piaget. Okay, so let's go for the nervous system. For the nervous system, this is the one wherein medyo mahihirapan tayo because it's not really medyo or intricate because they actually do very, very different things. Okay, so for the nervous system, we have two of them, which is the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so let's discuss them going down. So yeah, again, we have the nervous system organization, which is the central nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord. And then for the peripheral nervous system, everything around it. So anything that is not the brain and the spinal cord, that's the peripheral nervous system or the PNS. All right. So the PNS is also subdivided into somatic and autonomic nervous systems. All right. So what is the difference? From the name autonomic, you can already say that this is something that you don't really need to think about. Okay. And then for somatic, this is something that you need to think about. So ganun lang siya. That's how you're going to be thinking of it. All right. We have two nervous systems in the PNS, which is efferent and afferent nerves. So I'll delve into that later on. Okay. And then for the central nervous system, we have the brain and the spinal cord. So for the brain, so this one directs the mental processes. This is like the battery of it all. Okay. And then the spinal cord, this one is the one that transmits all the information from the brain. And then it's also responsible for the involuntary and automatic behaviors and reflexes. Okay, balik tayo kay peripheral nervous system. Again, we have the somatic and the autonomic. So somatic, this connects to the sensory receptors and controls skeletal muscles. Like what I said a while ago, you really need to think, like for example, how I'm moving right now. The somatic nervous system is the one that's making me move. While autonomic nervous system is the involuntary bodily functions like the heartbeat, the blinking of the eye. So that's basic. That you don't really need to tell them, okay, blink, 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 or you don't really need to tell your heart to beat. So that's the difference between the two. The autonomic nervous system is also divided into two. There is a sympathetic nervous system or parasympathetic nervous system. All right, so autonomic, like what I said a while ago, you don't really need to think about it. But there are two ways of it to move. It's either you are stressed. If you are stressed, for example, your heart beats a little bit faster, or your eyes blink a bit faster, or your skin, there's like what they call this chicken skin. It's something like that. So that is how the sympathetic nervous system it is activated when you feel aroused or stressed. And then, well, parasympathetic nervous system, this is when you're just chill. You're calm, you're normal, so everything's fine. So again, sympathetic, this is oftentimes when you're aroused, parasympathetic if you're calm. So this is the brain overview. So we have three divisions of the brain. We have the forebrain, we have the midbrain, and the hindbrain. All right, so we're going to be talking about how these parts work. Okay, so first let's talk about the hindbrain. So for the hindbrain, we have the medulla, the pons, and the cerebellum. Okay, for the medulla, this is the life survival functions. And then you can see it over here. Right? And then for the pons, this is mostly for respiration, movement, walking, sleeping, and dreaming. And then the cerebellum, this is for your movements. So coordination, balance, and everything else. Right? And then next is for the forebrain. So this is for the upper level structure. So this part, if you can see it here, that one. All right, for the thalamus, again, we're gonna break this down. For the thalamus, we have the sensory messages. So this comes from your skin, this comes from your eyes, from your taste buds, everything that you feel. Is that's where your information processes. For the hypothalamus, this is for your hormones. So this is located around here. All right, and regulating the body's internal environment. Okay, cerebral cortex, this is for your sensations, motor control, and higher mental processes. So thalamus, this is for the sensory, again for the eyes, for the touching and everything. But then for cerebral cortex, this is for your other sensations and motor control. So basically, how you move your body, how do you do it. So that's where information comes from. And then for the limbic system, it's actually this whole thing. So that's interconnected group of the four brain structure involved with emotion, drives, and memory. Right. So for the others, that this is the next part of the brain, which is the midbrain. It's this tiny one there in the middle. So this is the whole forebrain, and then this is the hindbrain going down. This blue thing there, it's midbrain. So this is the collection of brain structures in the middle of the brain. This coordinates movement, patterns, sleep, and arousal. Now, if you can see, there are other parts of the brain that overlaps, but then again, they are all working together. There's no one part that's actually just doing one thing. They're actually coordinating with each other. Right? And then this is the reticular formation. As you can see, do you see this one, this red line there, like red color? So that is the reticular formation. This screens incoming information and controls arousal. So basically, when information goes up to our brain, the reticular formation is the one that receives it and screens it if it should go to the brain or not. So basically, that's it. So now you already know the parts of the brain. So sensation and perception. So now you already know how things work in the brain. So now let's see how we actually have this thing called sensation and perception. How do we get to have sensation and perception? Okay, so let's start with sensation. So these are the basic terminologies that you need to understand before we continue. So okay, first is sensation. This is when you actually get something from everything. Like for example, touching things, tasting things, that's sensation. That is how you receive your physical stimulation. And then this is the process wherein everything is being processed in your environment. Now, this is the first part. Now, once you already get the sensation, you now move to perception. This is now where you develop the information that your body has and that has received. So this is be select, organize, and interpret. Always remember those three things because this is how perception works. And then this is how you also act and understand what the sensation is. So for example, you touch this, you touch your phone, sensation goes to your brain. And then once it goes to your brain, okay, so you know this is hard. So you know this is a phone. That's how you do things. That's how perception works. This is already how you make things. That's how you understand things already. All right. And then transduction is the physical energy to neural impulses. This is how sensation goes to perception. So physical energy, how you touch things, how you taste things, how you see things, and then it becomes a neural impulse that is going to be transmitted to your brain, right? And then that's where perception happens. All right. So absolute threshold. So if you can see other people, for example, they don't hear something because it didn't hit their absolute threshold. For you to have sensation and perception, you need to hit your absolute threshold first. So this is the minimum amount of stimulus required. All right. So for example, if you cannot see something, how can you perceive it? What is the sensation? What would happen? Right? It needs to hit the absolute threshold first. Right? For J and D, this just means just noticeable differences. So you can see this is a small difference between the stimuli that people can detect from 50% of the time. For example, you can tell the difference of one color white to another color of the white. So you can see the difference between the two. But not a lot of people can see that. Do you understand? So we have another one is Weber's law. So this is the physical intensity versus perceptual. So basically, this is your psychological experience. So for example, if you grip things, what is the intensity that you need to do for you to perceive it? So basically, that's Weber's law. Okay, next is sensory adoption. So basically, this is the decline in sensitivity of the stimulus. For example, do you know what acupuncture? If you're gonna be doing acupuncture, some people might think, okay, if you prick yourself, that would hurt, right? But for some reason, for acupuncture, it feels good. It's because of the constant exposure that you have to that pressure or to that pain. So the sensory adaptation happens when there's so much constant exposure to it that it just becomes like it feels good now or it doesn't feel anything anymore. So that's how sensory adaptation works. Your body adapts to the pressure of the sensation, basically. Right. And then this is just a theory. The signal detection theory is how you're just going to be making your decision based on your sensation and perception. Okay, so there are five classic senses and two somesthesis. All right, so five classic, like what we learned in grade school, we have the vision, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. I think something that's different here is the kinesthetic as vestibular. Right, so let's go for the five classic senses first. Right, so light is the vision stimulus. Light, when it comes to light, there are wavelengths. So these wavelengths are all around us. The most smallest type of wavelength is the cosmic rays, and the biggest one is radio. But for us, for this specific topic, we are going to be focusing on the visible spectrum, which is the RGB, which is the red, green, blue, and indigo violet. These are the visible spectrums that we actually see. The other things, which is cosmic rays to ultraviolet, and infrared to radio, that's what we cannot see. There, I'll show you this first. This is the type of electromagnetic radiation. These are the rays that we actually have, and then these you need to focus on this one, the visible light. Visible light is the ones that make things. That's what how we can see things. That's how the color works, right? Okay, so vision actually works this way. Humans actually have photoreceptors in our eyes. And then these photoreceptors in the eye are sensitive to wavelengths, like what I've shown a while ago. And the wavelength that is very sensitive to it is the light energy called the visible spectrum. Okay, so this is how it actually works. First, it hits your cornea, this part, this one. It hits your cornea, then it heads to the pupil, then the lens, the blood vessels, and then receptor in the retina. There's a receptor here, there, images here. And then as you can see, this X, by the way, that's your image. You would see that it's actually on the different part. It's on the other side of the brain. Because here, when it happens is that when you sense something, it actually goes it intersects in the brain. All right. So before I get to that, let's talk about how this works. Okay. So for the sclera, oh wait, it's not here now. Sorry, it's not there. Right. So this is actually, can you see the white part of your eye? Okay, so the white part of your eye, that's your sclera. This is the protection for your eye. Let's talk about the part of the eye, sorry. Yeah. And then for the cornea, this is where it all starts. Okay, and then this is where light enters. And then when it comes now to the pupil, this is the opening of the iris. So this is the one that opens and closes. It's like that. So this regulates the light. And then after that, there's the lens here. There's a lens here at this part. Here, sorry. Here, there's the lens. And then this is the one that is more focused on the object itself. There. And then this would also do the contracting and it depends on the light actually. If the light is bigger or brighter, it contracts. And then if it's darker, it becomes bigger. Right? And then the retina. Where's the retina? Here. There. Here in the retina. Here the retina, there's photoreceptors that like what I said a while ago, which would be going now. Okay, so we have this. We have the photoreceptors here. Right? So for the photoreceptors, this converts the light into electrical signals. The electrical signals is the one that simulates the physiological processes that would happen after that. Right? So basically, to make it short, rods. Rods is for the night, and then cones is for the early night in morning. So this the rods is actually located in the retina's periphery. Can you see this one? Right. So and then it's if you could remember or if you could imagine if it's nighttime, it's easier for you to see the black and whites, right? That's how the rod works because it's nighttime. The rods are the ones that are acting when it's nighttime or if it's dark. And then while it comes to cones, this is in the middle of the retina, here, here, this one. All right. And then this is usually done in the morning or at the night. So this is the one that's activated. All right. Also remember that rods and cones are bipolar cells. Yeah, if one works, then one doesn't. Basically, that's it. Right. Next is the hearing stimulus. Okay, now for the hearing stimulus, we have the sound. So for the sound, this is the mechanical energy that is typically caused by vibrating objects. Okay, as you can see, there's like three words here, which is the frequency, amplitude, and complexity. So let's try to identify what those are. So frequency is actually the one that is perceived as a term pitch here, the word pitch. So this is actually measured by hertz. And then we have another one, which is amplitude. Amplitude is the one that corresponds to loudness. Okay, for loudness, this is measured by decibel. And if you are exposed to intense sounds, in here in loudness and amplitude, it can actually cause you hearing loss. Okay, next is complexity. This is corresponds to timbre. Okay, timbre is looking at the shape of the sound wave waveform. And then for this one, they also have identical loud. It's also identical to loudness and pitch, but it actually sounds different. So these three, they actually work. They are all sound, and they are all the stimulus of hearing. How does hearing work? Okay, so this is first the anatomy of the ear. So it goes to the shape of the ear, which is this one. It depends on the shape of your ear, and then the part inside of your ear, which is the outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear, and then the basilar membrane, and then the timing base, which is the auditory nerve crossover. So let's go to what are the parts of the ear. So we have the outer ears, which is the pinnae. This is the shape. Okay, now if a lot of people might think the shape of the ear doesn't really count, but it actually does. The bigger the shape of the ear, it's better for them to grasp the frequencies and localization. And then another one of the part of the outer ear is the auditory canal. Next is the middle ear. We have the eardrum, hammer, anvil, stirrup. Hammer, anvil, stirrup, this is the three bones inside your ear. And then these ones, they are the ones that translate the mechanical air movement through mechanical advantage into hydrofluic movement. So that means like they bang each other, like they bang, how do I say it better? Like they tap into each other, and then after that, it goes to your brain, something like that. Okay, so for the inner ear, this is the basilar membrane. This is where the short waves closes, and then it goes to your auditory cortex, which is the temporal. Okay, next is the smell. So for the smell, it's actually the stimulus for that is chemical. So for stimulus to be smelled, it must be dissolved, meaning it needs to go inside your nose first before it can become a stimulus. So olfactory cells carry information to the olfactory bulb. So this olfactory bulb activates the prefrontal cortex. Okay, next, and the neurons that is inside your nose, its life cycle is only 30 days, and it's actually continually created. So after some die, another one replaces it. Okay, so what are pheromones? These are same the odors that people actually emit. This is how people communicate through smell. So and that's actually also used by other animals. And then if you happen not to have a smell, this is a disorder, which is asnomia, which is don't have a sense of smell. Okay. And then next is taste. Another stimulus is chemical for taste. So again, if your stimulus is a chemical, it needs to be dissolved first. And then now here, you would see the map of the taste receptor. So again, the first how people thought the taste receptor works before is it's spread out. But after a few years, it was actually not true. It is actually like this. So there's like bitter, acid, salty, sweet, salty, acid. So that's how it works. Oh yeah, and your taste buds actually replenish in every 10 days. So that's why dentists tell you to brush your teeth because it removes the dead taste buds on your mouth, on your tongue. Okay, so many phases. So these are the mechanical senses, like what I said ago, which is the kinesthesis, vestibular sensation, and the skin senses. But we're gonna be focusing on the kinesthesis and the vestibular sensation. So kinesthesis, this is how it communicates information through movement and location of these parts. Receptors found in joints and ligaments as well. So let's talk about the vestibular system. So vestibular system is basically on your head. So this is how you tilt your head. So this is the equilibratory sense. This is the one mostly for your balance. Right. So this is more on the balance and knowledge of your body position. So for example, if you clap near your ear, you already know where it is. So that is how the vestibular sense works. Okay. And then at the same time, if you lose your balance, most probably there's something wrong with your vestibular system because this is what makes you balance basically. Now let's go back to kinesthesis. Oh, wait, what's the difference? Basically, kinesthesis is your whole body from your neck down. Vestibular sense is from your head up. Let's talk about perception. So perception, but like what I said a while ago, after all you sense everything, this is how you already work out your information in your head. So this is how you distinguish from one stimulus to another. This is how it works. This is how you get your attention. This is called the attention process. So attention is a process how you focus on one stimuli. Okay, so there are two types of attentional process, which is selective attention and divided attention. So basically, how it says selective, your attention is only on one thing, while divided attention is you are in different stimulus. For example, selective attention is just like when you're looking at something, you're only looking at one object. While divided attention is you have to look at different things. You have to think of two different things. Okay. So what are your perceptual abilities? So for your perceptual abilities, you have your perceptual organization. How do you make sense of things? The first one is illusions, the shot organization, and everything else that would be covered in a while. So basically, perceptual organization, you group things, and then once you group things, you make sense of it as a whole. That's basically it. Okay, let's talk about Gestalt. If you would look at this, you already knew what it is by just looking at it. So the whole experience is greater than the sum of the individual parts. When you look at these images, like for example, law of similarity, these are the laws within the Gestalt. Okay, so you would see these law of closure. For example, you already know that this is a diamond because your already perception is already focused on this one. Okay, so you don't really look at it at one piece at a time. You look at it as a whole image already. And you just fill things out as you go. Okay, so this is one of the most popular ones, which is the figure ground perception. Here you can see at the photo, you can either see a cup or you can see two women looking at each other. How does this work? So this is for you, how will you separate the background and the foreground? If you're looking at the background, you're more focused on that, you would most probably see two women. But if you're focused on the white area, you would most probably see the cup. So that is how the figure ground perception works. You check the ground, or you check the background, or you check the foreground. It's either way. That is how you perceive things. Right? So perceptual constancy. In this one, as you can see, if you could just look at the picture, even if you open the door, you know it's a door. Why? Because of shape constancy and size constancy. So here you would see the shape, it might change, but you still perceive this as the door. So despite it change the shape of the door, like for example, this one, it's a square, and then this changes a little bit, and then this changes a little bit, but you know it's a door. So even though you change things, even though you flip it over, you do something to it, you know it's that same thing, right? And then this is the perceived size of the object. It remains constant despite the change and the size. So for depth perception, we have binocular cues, which is the depth cues provided by both eyes, and ocular cues, which is based on our ability to sense the tension. And then we have the accommodation, and under ocular cue, we have accommodation and convergence. So for monocular cues, we have depth cues provided by one eye. So this is the motion, texture, gradient, linear perspective, and their position, relative light, and light and shadow. So for motion, this is wherein, for example, when something is nearer to your face, you would see it most probably it's faster. Right? If it's closer to you, then it's farther away. So which one is faster? Most probably you would perceive something that is nearer to you to be faster. Okay, for texture gradient, this is when it comes to distance, blurring and further distances. And then linear perspective, this is how parallel lines are distanced from each other. So for example, do you know the train? As the line come together, the farther it looks. And when it is further away from each other, the nearer it looks. So that's the linear perspective. Okay. And then interposition, this is one item blocks the view of items back of it. So basically, one object is behind it. Basically, that's how you perceive it. Okay, relative height. So one object is higher in the perceptual field are farther away. So relative height for this, for example, the further away if you look at this, the smaller it looks like it's lower. And then as you go up, it looks like it's getting higher and higher. So that is how you see, that's how the depth perception works. Then for light and shadow, the lighter objects appears to be closer. For example, if you would look at things, the darker it is, the further away it looks. And the lighter it is, the nearer it looks. Oh wait, I forgot to discuss accommodation and convergence. Sorry. All right, for accommodation, this is actually just how your eyes like work. It's elongating lens, and this is actually we can only see up to 25 feet. So that's basically it. And then for convergence, this is more on the tension from your eyes. So ocular motor cues is mostly biological, basically, and then binocular cues is mostly how we perceive things, how we just look at it. Okay, so let's go to consciousness. So consciousness is different from one another. Okay, so it's if you're aware of your thoughts and feelings, most probably you're conscious about it, and some others they aren't. Okay, so another cognitive state is wherein you're aware of yourself and your situation. That means you're conscious, and you are aware of your environment, your thoughts, processes, and your emotions. So there are different levels of your consciousness, where we have the conscious, pre-conscious, and the unconscious. So again, conscious is when you are aware of everything that's happening to you. Pre-conscious is that this is the middle ground of everything. So this is where ordinary memory goes. So once you get a memory, it just stays in the pre-conscious for some time. So this is where knowledge, past memories, other data we can actually access. Once we get conscious, we get the data, we get information, and it is stored in pre-conscious. If you keep on using that information, it will keep on staying on your pre-conscious. While unconscious, these are the things that we usually hide, that we usually want to forget. But it's still there, but you are not trying to retrieve any of that information or any of anything that is in there. So these are usually shameful experiences, sexual desires, fears, violence, and other dark thoughts. Oh, sorry, the wrong spelling. All right. So there are different types of consciousness. We have controlled processes, automatic processes, daydreaming, and altered state of consciousness. Okay, let's talk about the controlled processes. It's called controlled processes because you actually know what is happening. You're aware, you're alert, you're concentrated, and you know what is happening because you're in control. Automatic processes, like for example, you don't really think about it that much. It just happens. It's your consciousness saying, okay, it's like an automatic thing for you already. You're conscious that you're not that conscious that you're doing it, but you know you're doing it. Like for example, you keep on doing it over and over again, it becomes your automatic process that you really don't think not to think about it that much. For example, something falls, you automatically catch it. That's your automatic process already because you didn't really think about it that way. It just happened. Okay, daydreaming. This is low level of awareness. This usually happens like you're just floating around. You're not really thinking that much. So this actually occurs in automatic processes and involves fantasizing while awake. It's outer state of consciousness. This is when meditation happens. So you try to alter the way you think. You're altering how you are trying to process everything. So this is usually done by meditation, psychoactive drugs, hypnosis, and when sometimes you're sleep deprived. So your altered state of consciousness is it's either you are trying to change the way you think or your consciousness, or you are trying to stay conscious. So basically that's it. Okay, let's talk about sleep and dreams. So sleep is the periodic state of rest of the mind. This is wherein your eyes are usually closed, most probably, and your consciousness is either fading away or it's already partially lost. Okay, and then for dreams, this doesn't happen much to a lot of people. But this is the unique state of consciousness wherein you're asleep, but you experience something visual, auditory, or tactile. We have sleep disorders. There are different types of insomnia. So the primary insomnia is you have insomnia because your body is just awake, but it doesn't always happen. Like you don't have it continuously. And this just happened because for rare reasons. And then for secondary insomnia, the reason for your insomnia is because of a sickness. So basically, again, if you're gonna be comparing these two, primary insomnia, you're not sick at all. You just don't feel really sleepy that time, or you need to sleep but you're not sleepy. Secondary insomnia is there's a reason behind it because you're sick. And then acute insomnia, this is brought to you by stress, and it doesn't really last that long. So maybe the longest time it can go is for a week, and after that, you can already sleep again. Okay, for traumatic insomnia, this is the worst one that you can have because it lasts for months and years, and it is a secondary insomnia. It's a type of secondary insomnia because you're already sick, you cannot sleep, and that's not normal. Okay. Another one is narcolepsy. In narcolepsy, there are two types. There are narcolepsy wherein you feel like your whole body doesn't want to move and yeah, you don't have much control on it anymore. And then type 2 of narcolepsy is without catalepsy. Cataplexy is the one wherein you lose your muscle control. So what is the symptoms of narcolepsy? So excessive daytime sleepiness, cataplexy, hallucinations, sleep paralysis, and disrupted sleep. Hallucinations there because usually it happens in your dreams when you are dreaming. And dreaming is one type of hallucination, right? Okay, so for memory, this is how you create your memory. So you encode, you store it, and then you retrieve it. Okay, so when you encode, you get your information. When you store, that is how you process everything. And then retrieval, when you need that information again, you just need to remember it. There are two types of memory. We have short-term memory and long-term memory. So short-term memory is when it's just there for a little while. And then for long-term memory, if you continuously use it and that information is in your memory all the time and you keep on using it has no limit, like the information you store in the hard drive of a computer. So basically, short-term memory, you just remember it for a short time. Long-term memory, you remember it more than a few minutes or a few seconds, or maybe a few days as well. Okay, there are two types of explicit memory. So explicit memory is a declarative type of memory. These are the facts and events that you have. So basically, you have semantic and episodic. Semantic, this is just what you learn. And then episodic, this is what you actually experienced. Again, semantic is what you just learned, maybe words, concepts, something that you just heard of. But episodic is how you actually, episodic is how you lived it. You would remember it because you lived it. Then we have implicit or the non-declarative memory. These are the memories that are not part of your consciousness and informed through behaviors. So basically, implicit memory is more of the muscle memory. So it stores information how you do things. Like how people say you don't forget how you ride a bike or you don't really forget how to play tennis because your body already knew how to do it and it's just all muscle memory coming from that. Okay, so motivation. Okay, so we have different types of theories for motivation. So motivation is a need or a desire that energizes your behavior and direct you towards a goal. So first is instinct theory. Basically, instinct theory, it just says that this is the first theory that motivation had because they say that you do things out of instinct. You do things because you need food. You do things because you need it and you need to satisfy that need. So that's instinct theory. Okay, drive reduction theory, this creates your aroused tension state. So basically this one, you are motivated because there's pressure, there's tension that's happening around you. That's why you need to read. That's your motivation. Right? So arousal theory, if drive theory is for you, your motivation is created because of tension. Arousal theory is also created by tension and by pressure, but this time arousal theory is saying that you need to reduce this. You need to reduce this tension. Maintenance of steady internal state. You are getting motivated in order for you to come back to a steady state or for you to return to a calm state. So that's your motivation. Okay, next is incentive theory. Incentive theory is usually used in businesses. It's also used in children. So for incentive theory, this is you need to have a drive, or you need to have incentives. It either be negative or positive for you to create that drive. In order for you to be motivated. For example, this isn't new. So for example, you want somebody to do something for you. You would always think, okay, what's in it for them? So what can you get from that? So for a kid, for example, okay, you tell this kid, can you buy me something? I'll give you something in return. That's your incentive for that. For them to do the act. That's their motivation. Next is cognitive theory. So this motivation is for you to understand everything. Basically, this is something for you to understand. Your motivation is for you to understand something. So you are influenced by the way people perceive themselves and their environment. So basically, this is more of the way you think. This is more an intrinsic type of motivation. Right, this is the most popular one, which is Maslow's. So this hierarchy of motives by Abraham Maslow. So this suggests that some needs have priority over others. So let's discuss this. So we have your physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. Here in hierarchy of motives, it just says that you cannot move up if you cannot satisfy the one below it. So for example, for somebody, you need to satisfy your physiological needs first, which is food, water, sleep, and breathing. So if you cannot satisfy this, you cannot move up, or you will not be motivated to get these other motivations, basically. So again, for example, you got your physiological, you have water, you have food, okay? So now you feel like, okay, my next motivation is safety. How do I feel safe? So that is how it goes up until for self-actualization. So this, not a lot of people get to go to this part of Maslow's hierarchy, but some people still do. Okay, so again, you cannot go up unless you satisfy the one below it. Okay, so we have psychoactive drugs. So there are two types of psychoactive drugs. There's illegal or illicit and legal. So how it says illegal means that you can get arrested for it if you use it. And legal, these are the ones that is actually still okay for you to use from time to time. So the first one is depressants. So for depressants, this reduces the central nervous system and it slows you down. Right. And then here in the presentation, you would see other depressants as well. It's just that it's somewhat separated because they are a bigger types of drugs. And then again, this lowers your heart rate and respiration rate. Next is alcohol. Alcohol is also a depressant. Its effect is also in the nervous system and it can induce state of stupor. That means you get drunk, basically. Next, barbituates. So barbituates are used for calming and sedating drugs. Next is opiates. These are narcotics that are addictive due to their pain-relieving qualities. What are the most common opiates that you could see around is codeine, which is for pain and coughing, morphine for severe pain, and fentanyl. This is a synthetic type of morphine, but it can only be used properly if your pain is severe. So opiates is a very addictive type of drug that a lot of people are trying to regulate. Another one is a stimulant. So this boosts your alertness and arousal in the brain and cause overall pleasure. If you would see, depressant makes you slower, it makes you think a little bit slower, your heart beat lower. This one, stimulants, it makes you just go for it like you're really high. So these are amphetamines, cocaine, and nicotine. All right, there we go. Speaking of nicotine, we have nicotine. This is a mild but highly addictive stimulant found in tobacco. Right. And then next is caffeine. This is found in coffee, tea, cola drinks, and chocolate. So these two, nicotine and caffeine, they're actually legal drugs, and you can take them, but it should always be at a minimum.
Thank you so much for studying with me. If ever you found corrections, feel free to comment below para makorek natin. And also, if you have some other resources, feel free to comment below para matulungan din natin yung other NMAT takers. If this channel has helped you, please consider subscribing. You can also share this with your friends who also need NMAT review resources. That's all.